Here's a full 1,600-word article written in storytelling style, perfect for YouTube narration, without headings. Step back in time to the rugged and unforgiving lands of the Wyoming Territory in the year 1847. The Oregon Trail was the lifeline of thousands of brave souls chasing dreams of land, gold, and a new beginning. But for one little girl named Molly Rose Patterson, just 8 years old, it became the backdrop for a tale of love, courage, heartbreak, and redemption that would forever be remembered as one of the most incredible stories of the American West. Molly Rose had already suffered more than most children could imagine. Born in Missouri, her mother died when she was only 5. Her father remarried quickly, hoping to secure a stable home for his daughter before joining the Great Migration westward. But Molly's stepmother, a stern and bitter woman, had no love for the child. She saw Molly as a burden, an extra mouth to feed on a journey where every crumb of food was precious. Her father, worn down by hardship and blinded by loyalty to his new wife, often failed to notice how cruelly Molly was treated. The long wagon train rolled on through dust and heat, and Molly walked most of the way barefoot, her small feet blistered and cut by sharp stones. She endured harsh words and punishments, her only comfort the memory of her real mother's lullabies. Then came the day that would change her life forever. Somewhere along a lonely stretch of the trail in Wyoming Territory, her stepmother saw the chance to rid herself of Molly once and for all. In the chaos of wagons creaking forward and settlers urging oxen ahead, the woman deliberately left Molly behind, pushing her toward the edge of the trail and telling her to find her own way. By the time Molly realized what had happened, the wagon train was gone, nothing but a distant cloud of dust on the horizon. Alone, terrified, and clutching only a small rag doll her mother had sewn for her, Molly Rose thought her short life had come to an end. The prairie stretched endlessly in every direction, with no shade, no water, and no sign of rescue. She sat down on the hard ground and cried until she had no more tears left. Yet fate had not abandoned her. By chance, a rancher named Thomas Whitaker was traveling back to his homestead after delivering supplies to a nearby outpost. A man in his late 30s, Thomas was known in the territory as a solitary figure. He had once been married, but tragedy struck when his wife and unborn child died during childbirth years before. Since then, he had buried his heart in work, raising cattle and tending to the land. But when he spotted a small figure sitting alone on the trail, he knew he could not ride past. Approaching carefully, he dismounted his horse and crouched down. Molly looked up at him with wide, tear-stained eyes, clutching her rag doll as though it were the only thing keeping her tethered to this world. Thomas asked her name, and in a trembling voice, she told him everything, that her stepmother had left her behind, that her father had done nothing to stop it, and that she had nowhere to go. Something inside Thomas stirred, a long-buried instinct to protect and to love. He lifted the frail girl onto his horse and promised her that she was safe now. The journey back to his ranch was not easy. Food was scarce, and Molly was weak from exhaustion, but Thomas cared for her as if she were his own daughter. He shared his water, gave her his blanket at night, and reassured her when coyotes howled in the distance. For Molly, who had known little kindness since her mother's death, it was the first time she truly felt safe again. When they arrived at the Whitaker homestead, Molly's eyes widened in awe. Nestled in a valley surrounded by mountains, the ranch was simple but sturdy, with a wooden cabin, corrals, and fields stretching out toward the horizon. For Thomas, it was merely the place where he worked and existed. But for Molly, it felt like the home she had always dreamed of. Over the months that followed, Molly slowly came back to life. She learned to ride horses, gather eggs from the hens, and help Thomas with chores. She laughed again, her joy filling the quiet corners of the cabin that had long stood silent. Thomas, once a man of solitude, found himself smiling at her chatter, reading to her by lamplight, and tucking her into bed with words of comfort. Though not bound by blood, the bond between them grew as strong as any family. Yet life in the Wyoming Territory was never without danger. Harsh winters, wild animals, and the constant threat of raids tested even the strongest settlers. One brutal winter, the ranch nearly ran out of supplies. Thomas risked his life traveling through a blizzard to reach the nearest town, determined that Molly would not go hungry. Another time, a rattlesnake struck near the cabin, and Molly, terrified, watched as Thomas calmly killed it before it could harm her. Each challenge only deepened her admiration and love for the man who had become her protector. But perhaps the most defining moment came when fate once again crossed their path with Molly's past. Nearly 2 years after Thomas found her, a wagon train stopped at the Whitaker ranch to rest. Among the weary travelers was none other than Molly's father and her stepmother. The moment Molly saw them, her heart raced with both fear and hope. She longed for her father's embrace, but when he looked upon her, his face was filled not with joy, but with shame. Her stepmother sneered, muttering that the girl should have stayed lost. Thomas stepped forward, his tall frame casting a shadow across the pair. He spoke firmly, making it clear that Molly was no longer theirs to mistreat. Her father, torn between guilt and cowardice, said little, while the stepmother's protests fell on deaf ears. Molly, clutching Thomas's hand, realized that family was not defined by blood, but by love, loyalty, and sacrifice. From that day forward, she never looked back. As the years passed, Molly grew into a strong young woman, shaped by the hardships of the frontier and the love she had found in the most unexpected way. Thomas, once a broken-hearted man, found healing in raising her, watching her flourish, and guiding her through life's challenges. Their story became a legend in the territory, a reminder that sometimes the most unlikely beginnings can lead to the most beautiful endings. In the evenings, when the sun set behind the mountains and painted the sky with shades of gold and crimson, Molly would sit on the porch beside Thomas, her rag doll long replaced by the confidence of a woman who knew her worth. She would tell him that he had saved her, but Thomas always shook his head and said it was Molly who had saved him, filling his empty home and broken heart with light once more. The tale of Molly Rose Patterson and Thomas Whitaker is more than just a story of survival. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of kindness, and the belief that family is not merely the one we are born into, but the one we choose and build with love. In a time and place where life was often cruel and uncertain, their bond stood as a beacon of hope, proving that even in the harshest wilderness, love could thrive and transform lives. And so, the Wyoming winds still whisper their story across the open plains, carrying with them the memory of a little girl abandoned on the trail, a lonely rancher with a scarred heart, and the second chance at life and love they found together. It is a story of courage, of second chances, and of the unbreakable bond between two souls brought together by fate. Even now, generations later, when people tell stories of the Oregon Trail and the families who braved it, the name Molly Rose Patterson is spoken with reverence. Not as a victim, but as a survivor, a girl who turned despair into destiny, and who taught all who knew her that love, once found, can conquer even the darkest of beginnings. Would you like me to also make this into a script-style narration with pacing cues for YouTube voiceover? That way it flows naturally for listening, not just reading.